I are studying Spanish at the moment, and we're struggling with the verb tenses. We're trying to choose the past, present, and future simple as possible. But in traveling, because I still don't know the basics of tenses, I didn't know if the guy I was talking to was going on holiday or just came back from holiday.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you have anything about tenses in languages?
Well,
because they're tense in information. They're filled with
there is, and I think typically in school people have done gone through the list of tenses, doing stuff, which is really dry. I find that very dry myself, and I think you can allow yourself to make mistakes. And this is one of the reasons I was telling you about collocations too, is because adults, they don't want to make mistakes. That's their big hang-up. Is that a lot of adults, they have their own psychological barriers that are holding them back, and making mistakes is one of them. So if you can have tricks at your disposal to kind of eliminate the amount of mistakes you make, if you know that you're speaking correctly, it's going to allow you, it's going to open you up. But that being said, it's okay for you to make mistakes as well. And if you mix up a verb tense, if you get a masculine or feminine wrong when you're speaking, it's not going to be the end of the world, right? So, I mean, it's fine.
But it was almost the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
I couldn't follow up with a question.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, one of the things with verb tenses is you can, have a sentence of your own packed in your mind of having a correct sentence, to help you remember how to use the verb tense. And so, there are things you can do aside from that to improve your listening skills, so you can tell which tenses are which. You know what I mean? That kind of
context.
Yeah, that helps. And so having kind of, there's what they call the C clauses in French, but it's if I did this, I would do that. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. And so if you kind of practice those and have those ready to go on your own, it'll allow you to, if you see how the structure works, then you can adapt it to your own situation. And so if you start to, if you're having trouble with verbs, I mean, you don't have to know all of them to begin with. There's some verbs that are not useful for actually speaking. They're more written verbs. So right off the bat, there's something you can push aside. And so concentrating on the ones that are going to be most useful to you at the beginning, building your foundation up so you can kind of build on top of that is some of the ways you can go about doing it.
Just like to add to that, I agree with you, you can't worry about making mistakes, but obviously if you don't understand what the person's saying, that's not so good. How often do you listen a day to your Spanish?
Maybe once a day on the radio, 102.7, and...
What I would recommend, certainly what we do at Link is, if you can't understand the tenses, then you don't understand very well. And therefore you should be listening to a limited amount of content over and over. Listening to the radio is not going to do that much for you. Okay? And so you need to take a limited amount of content and listen to it 10 or 20 times. And ideally, what we do in our system is we have this enormous library of audio MP3 files. For every audio file, and a lot of it is just ordinary conversation and a whole range of stuff. You pick something you're interested in. Pick something where you like the voice. This is important, because if you don't like the voice, and if you don't like the subject, you're not going to learn. And then we will have a transcript. And then when you read the transcript, what we do, again, to deal with tenses and even collocations and so forth, is you select the words that you're interested in. And that will automatically grab words on either side of it. And you can edit this. And then so you start saving these little collocations, how, if it's a certain tense, of some word, you'll see from the context, because it had yesterday written there, and you save it, and you study it a bit, then you go back to listening to it again, and gradually, because there's no way, I can tell you from my own experience, looking at a table, a conjugation table, you think you're learning it, you can't remember it. It's not at that level that you're going to absorb the language. It's part of a context that you have heard many, many times, where you can identify with the whole context, and that word had that particular function, and slowly you start to create these neural networks in your brain. So to me, a tense is no different from any other aspect of the language. You should learn it at your level. If you don't understand the tense differences, you should be listening to this limited content that you like to listen to 20 times, and then on to another and another and another, and listen 45 minutes to an hour a day.
And it's important to, like, some people, they want to see the word and hear it at the same time. You may be one of those people, you may not. But some people, they really need to see it visually in order to make that kind of connection. And so focusing on, if you listen to the radio, I mean, it's great to listen to the radio because you can hear different subjects and different topics and you get exposed to different vocabulary. But when you're trying to build your own skill set, you need to kind of focus individually until you've got it under your wing, until you've incorporated it into your own kind of routine, your language routine, you could think of it. Then it's just going to be yours, and so you're not only going to be able to understand it, but you're also going to then be able to use it too. So by focusing individually, you then, it's like, say if you went to, you're taking some kind of sport. Say you're doing fencing and they taught you a move. You learn the move and then you practice it, right? And then it becomes part of your skill set. So if you learn a whole bunch of moves all at once, then it's hard to, keep them straight in your mind. So, kind of doing it a little bit systematically like that is actually very helpful. And so then it becomes your own.
I'd like to ask you something.
I think, sorry, the gentleman in the back has his hand up.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'll ask the question in the common language, if that's okay. You created the hunger for the hunger, so it looks like we've kind of got a handle on the technology, on the methods, and all these new technical enablers, iPods and others. And during your talk, you talked about creating the hunger, which is really the ultimate bottleneck. Could you explain a bit more on that for us, both of you? How do you create this hunger for going to the books?
Okay, it's what we do is let the learner choose the content that the learner is interested in. One of the major problems in a conventional classroom is that the teacher has 20 people in the classroom. The teacher says, today we're going to study this. And maybe the student is not interested in this. So first of all, let the person choose the content they like, let them choose a voice they like. In our system, we don't ask people to do things that many people, let's put it this way, we ask people to do things that are easy to do. Listen. Listen and read. Listen and read. Listen to and read something you're interested in. That's about 80% of what you need to do. And the other...
Driver's seat.
Pardon?
You put that in the driver's seat.
Well, that's right. And then when you read, you select the words you want to know. And then we have flashcards, so that once you've selected these words and you've collected the little collocations or phrases that go with those words, and because we're connected to an online dictionary, you can put in the definition that you like. We call it a hint because the dictionary equivalence is never one-to-one. It's an indication of what it might mean. You go through the flashcards, which is again quite addictive and easy to do. So what you do is you let them do things they want that they initially have chosen. The tasks that they're required to do are easy. We don't ask people to, what was the meaning of something or other. If they enjoyed listening to it, they're good. I don't need to ask them if they understood the first paragraph or to interpret. We don't need any of that. Listen to it. If you want to, listen again. If you don't want to listen to it again, listen to something else. So the whole idea is to let people do things that are enjoyable tasks, and if they're enjoying what they're doing, they're likely to stay with it. Now, we cannot create hunger. Some people, someone who is not interested in the language is not going to learn. But a lot of people in school, if instead of forcing them to get some grammar thing wrong that they're not likely to get right, if we gave them the opportunity to select something on music, on sport, or whatever, there's a greater likelihood that they would find that interesting. I don't know if that answers your question.
Just speak to that as well. I mean, the student is really the key to their own success. And I think that's why we're really talking about the student and trying to put them in control of their own language learning situation, because they know what they don't understand. They know what they're having trouble with. They know what their strengths are. They know what their weaknesses are. So they're the best one to actually tailor the language learning experience to their own needs and what they want to focus on. So each person in this room has different interests. So if there's someone here who's interested in sports, let's say hockey, and someone else is here and interested in cars, that's a way into the language. And that's something you're going to be more likely to speak about. So say if you like, let's just take cars for instance. If you're interested in cars, you want to meet other people who are interested, have the same interests as you. So you're going to be more likely to speak about that. So learning about flowers isn't going to be as immediately useful to you as learning about something that you're interested in. So if you can start with something you're interested in, it's going to make everything else, like learning the structures, you can use those to talk about anything that you need. And having a vocabulary specific to your own interests is a great way to start kind of getting into the languages because you're already interested.
One more thing I think that Robyn said and that I agree with 100%. Anyone can learn. And one of the biggest problems that adults have, and I agree entirely, is that they don't think they can do it. They fundamentally don't think they can transform themselves into a person that's fluent in another language. The child has no such hang-ups. and the adult is afraid to sound foolish or whatever. The child has no such hang-ups. So I think a big part of it too is to get rid of everything that's negative. Now you're still not going to get 100% of the people who are hungry to learn a language, but in New Brunswick it was 0.68%. So I think we can get it up to 10.